Hi all, I have yet another fascinating game to show you of Leela Chess. So actually she was playing with the black pieces in this game against Komodo 9.42. It was a 5-minute game with 10-second move increment, 10 seconds per move increment. So it was contributed by PWA128 on the Leela Chess forums. More games for commenting. If you want to add your own games there, if you want to create your own Leela games, you can. So B3, the Nimzovich-Larsen attack from Komodo. We have E5, bishop B2, knight C6, E3. Now I've been usually playing knight F6 with, and people really know what they're doing usually with bishop B5, bishop D6, knight A3 quirky to try and get knight C4 in. Then I discovered that there's knight A5, and I've had this position with black, but I'm not entirely comfortable with it sometimes. So this can carry on like this. Apparently this is like one of the main lines. So in this game though, we get an alternative to knight F6, which is D5, which is a major alternative. Bishop B5, bishop D6. So renewing the protection of the E5 pawn, because that knight's just been pinned. Knight F3, and now the more radical way of supporting E5 is F6. Queen E7 might have been plausible as well. We have C4, A6 now. Bishop takes, B takes, knight C3, bishop E6, D4, E4. So black's gaining a space advantage. One of the issues around this, though, can sometimes be this F4 square is sometimes good for the knight coming back to F4. D5 might be weak. The C file might be vulnerable. So there are some potential issues. We see the move knight H6 being played by Leela here. So now knight GE2, black castles, queen C1. White can't really go to castle queenside that easily here. As an example, if queen D2, knight F5, if white castled queenside, then taking on C4 might actually be quite nice here. This is nice, for example, for black. It's a bit dangerous to do that. So we have this awkward looking queen C1, which does rule out the option of castling queenside for the moment a bit further. And we have knight F5 now, and white decides to castle kingside, which is kind of the wrong sort of part of the pawn chain, because this pawn chain is very aggressive and it is sort of pointing all the pieces at white's king. It does seem a very risky thing to do indeed, just from an intuitive perspective. So because after knight H4 there's also the possibility of pushing the F pawn at some point. So we have bishop A3, at least trying to extinguish one of the major attacking pieces. So that's one of the benefits of queen C1, one of the ideas, one of the points. But now bishop G4, and it's the light squares under great scrutiny with this move. Bishop takes D6, queen takes D6, now king H1, and this next move for me is an iconic representative of this new form of neural network chess, because it's almost incalculable. It not only mixes king safety as an ingredient, but there's a longer term ingredient of this move, which I think is much harder for the brute force chess engines to evaluate, which is the emergence of passed pawns as well in conjunction with king safety. I wonder if you can guess what black does if I give you 5 seconds to pause the video here. Black to play. Okay, knight takes G2. Now apparently, according to my chess engine, Houdini, F5 is also pretty dangerous. It's a dangerous position generally. This kind of thing is pretty critical for white's king safety in any case, where white could be getting absolutely massacred. Big advantage for black. But this is really interesting as well, and quite dangerous. So after king takes we have check, and now F5, rook D1, rook F6. You see at this point now, it seems one of the better moves apparently is H4. this has a really long-term implication associated with it. If black can win that h-pawn, then this becomes a good candidate in the long run. But to evaluate the potential of this h-pawn and white's king safety, I think is beyond horizon, basically, of brute force. An alternative to h4, knight g3, is allowing even more trouble, potentially. I think because h4, there might be rook g6, and looking at g3, it looks to be very, very dangerous. This is an example continuation where black is doing very well. Okay, so h4 is played as a defensive try. Rook h6, king f1, and now this is what I mean. Rook takes h4. There's a pass pawn candidate here, and it's not as if the white king is being mated or anything. It's just in an awkward spot, and it's sort of tied down in the center here. After rook h2, Leela is just content to tie the king down to protect f2 for the moment, because after rook f8 here, rook b2, if the king tries to move, losing f2 is not very good. It's just going to be a worse version of the game with the h-pawn. But even in the game after rook b2, the big thing here now emerging is h5. And I just imagine, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, and I would imagine brute force having a bit of difficulty with this sort of attack, to predict this kind of attack, which is a combination of not really checkmating white, just leaving the king in the center for this h-pawn to be the longer term downside of white's position. These long scope downsides, long horizon. So this h-pawn is simply just being pushed. And ironically, on the earlier video just on the channel, someone was saying, is there any game where Leela doesn't ram a pass pawn down the opponent's throat? This does seem like another case of a pass pawn being used quite aggressively here. So rook b1, h3. It's like, for me, this is a mix of ingredients of king safety and pass pawn potential. And it's just basically means a deteriorating evaluation for white's position, technically, which is difficult to foresee from that original knight sack. So we have now rook g2. Yep, pass pawn's only 2 steps away, and white finally gives up the ghost of f2. So that's taken, gives up protecting f2, and the pass pawn's still running down the board. After c5, queen g3, the game was ended here, was adjudicated. Like in boxing, I think it's too much for one of the players to carry on, basically. It's too much of a pounding. If it did carry on, yeah, king c2, well, we can imagine, I'll give you king c2 to start off with. Just queening here distracts the rook from e2. This is absolute murder, of course. And we can even try and work on attacking the king over here and over here, everywhere, basically. That knight's pinned, so this will be check winning the queen. So it'll be a total disaster. You get the picture there. It's a total massacre. Instead of king c2, if we look at queen d1, then actually black could just take on e2, and then actually here play f4. This is quite cute. f4 to undermine e3, and then get another pass pawn if needed, f3. And here, even though black is technically a knight down, it's just, these pass pawns are absolute killers. So, you know, there's f1 on the way. This is just an example continuation. Yeah, just queening there, and that's the end of that. This pass pawn's not going anywhere. So this is an interesting game, quite instructive, and maybe shows this new kind of this is new artificial intelligence with neural networks. The attacks are not just going to be based on the king safety, but pass pawn potential could be part of the mix, as this shows. Okay, hope you got something from that. Comments, questions, likes, shares appreciated. Thanks very much.